1920s film production, objectives, silent movies, early theater buildings, movie production, movie stars and their legacy. Silent movies were accompanied by live music and captivated audiences everywhere, even in London and Moscow. Early theaters were called Nickelodeons and not as nice as glamorous picture palaces that gave excitement and joy to everyone who visited. Those theaters had over 1,500 seats. Some of the nicest theaters were the Million Dollar Theater in Los Angeles, the Egyptian Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, and the Chinese Theater, also on Hollywood Boulevard. The movie production business was very competitive. The Big Five studios were Warner Bros. Pictures, Paramount Pictures, Radio Pictures, Metro-Goldwyn Pictures, and 20th Century Fox. Smaller production companies include Columbia and Universal Pictures. The 1920s introduced some of the world's most famous faces, such as Charlie Chaplin and Gloria Swanson. The 20s even introduced small glimpses of Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. Movies range from historical extravaganzas to romantic melodramas. Swashbucklers also were a popular genre, which was a European action drama. Star imprints were also becoming popular. A star imprint is when a star puts a handprint or footprint on wet cement. These instantly created a tourist attraction and made the Chinese theater in Hollywood an iconic piece of American filmmaking history. Summary: silent movies were a main source of entertainment in the 20s. Theater buildings were very glamorous. The 20s were the first period where celebrities were idolized. Bibliography: filmsite.com and 1920s30s.com.
Okay, so influential African American women of the Roaring Twenties. The objectives are to cover the time period, to talk about Mary Montgomery Booth and Elizabeth Ross Haynes, Alice Paul, Lucy Diggs Slowe, Violet Neatley Anderson, Selena Sloan Butler. Our goal is to highlight African American women who impacted America socially and politically during the 1920s. During their time, the KKK was very active. We were experiencing the Harlem Renaissance. The Volstead Act and Prohibition were in place. We were fighting for women's suffrage, and progressive reformers were ignoring the African American women's needs. Jim Crow era and segregation was a thing at this time.
Mary Montgomery Booth, 1877 to 1948, daughter of former slaves, first African-American woman to sit on the Republican National Committee, 1924. 1928, Dancing with Hoover scandal. Republican National Committee women headed GOP for racial and social equality.
This is what she was known for. Her social and racial equality views.
Elizabeth Ross Haynes, 1883, 1953. African-American activist, writer, and administrator, advocate of improved social conditions and service job training for urban black workers. She accepted segregated social agencies as long as black professionals ran them. Essential link between white reform groups and black women's groups. YWCA, Young Women Christian Association, no black settlement houses, and one of the few resources for AA women. 1922, first black person on YWCA's national board.
The Roaring Twenties, Women and Prohibition. Objective.
Go.
We will be talking about Alice Paul.
Alright. Alice Paul, 1885 to 1977. American suffragist. Worked with England's radical suffragists while attending a training school for Quakers. Remaining in England from 1907 to 1910. During her stay in England, she found her vocation, the struggle for women's rights. Working under militant suffragists, her education as an activist was acquired through a series of arrests, imprisonments, hunger strikes, and forced feedings. Returned to U.S. in 1910, earned Ph.D. in sociology from University of PA. 1912, full-time suffragist. Started working with National American Women's Suffrage Association. Left NAWSA in 1914. Confounded the Congressional Union, dedicated to seeking a federal consultant. Amendment for women's suffrage. 1916, founded the National Women's Party. Led pickets, a White House and Congress. See book for account of jailing. Sentenced to 7 months, let out in 5 weeks due to ultimately Alice Paul's tactics and persuasion from Carrie Chapman and accused press Wilson to make a federal suffrage amendment a priority. Paul was a pivotal force in the passage and transition in 1920 of the 19th Amendment.
While she was on trial, Alice Paul is known to have said, "We do not wish to make any plea before this court. We do not consider ourselves subject to this court, since as an unfranchised class, we have nothing to do with the making of the laws in which have put us in this position." The motto of the picketers that she led for the White House protests was, "The time has come to conquer or submit. For us, there can be but one choice. We have made it." While on her deathbed, she said, "I think if we get freedom for women, then they are going to do a lot of things that I wish they wouldn't do. But it seems to me that it isn't our business to say what they should do with it. It is our business to see that they get it."
Lucy Diggs Slough, 1885 to 1937. Graduated second in class from Colored High School. First female graduate of her high school to go to Howard University with a scholarship. While L. Howard sings in university choir, president of women's tennis team, founding member of the first Greek letter sorority for black women, Alpha Kappa Alpha, graduated as class Victorian. Began teaching high school. 1917, claimed the first women's title at the American Tennis Association National Tournament in Baltimore, making her the first AA woman to earn a NAT title in any sport. Coincides with organization of the first black junior high school in in Washington area. She's a principal, and in 1922 becomes the first dean of women at Howard. 1922 helped organize National Association of College Women. Continued to
She continued to spearhead progress for African Americans on college campuses, lobbying for changes in academic standards for students, better health conditions on campuses, and improved workplace atmosphere for female administrators until her death. Violet Neatley Anderson, born in 1982 and died in 1937. She served as a courtroom reporter for 15 years prior to her graduation in law school in 1920, when she established a private practice in Illinois. She was the first woman of any race to practice private law in the state of Illinois. In 1922, she successfully defended a woman who was accused of murdering her husband. This success resulted in her being appointed to assistant prosecutor in Chicago, which was a first for African American women. In 1926, Anderson became the first African American female attorney to practice before the Supreme Court. Selena Saloon Butler, born in 1872 and died in 1964. She was an English teacher and an organizer. She worked directly with the Young Women's Christian Association. In 1911, she organized the first National Congress of Colored Parents and Teachers. She co-founded the Spelman College Alumni Association. In 1929 and 1930, she served on a committee for President Hoover's White House Conference on Child's Health and Protection. The National Congress of Colored Parents and Teachers and Congress of Mothers worked closely to improve conditions for children and teachers. This became what is now known as the PTA. Butler centered her life work on improving the educational environment and upholding the rights of all children, regardless of race or situation. In summary, women such as Alice Paul, Mary Montgomery, Elizabeth Ross, Lucy Diggs, Violet Anderson, and Selena Sloan Butler all played key roles in the social and political development of America in the 1920s, be it in achieving first within the African American community or in impacting the suffragist movement. They all made a difference behind the scenes of the glamour of the Roaring Twenties. We're excited. We used history.com, ivy50.com, revolvi.com, blackpast.org twice, and the Georgia Encyclopedia.